You're listening to the Pursuing Alpha podcast, hosted by Charles Brandon Snyder.
There's a good friend of mine. He's one of my mentors, and he was like, hey, he was on the podcast named Wes. If you ever get to see one of our podcasts, watch his. He's amazing. Probably one of the top 10 advisors in the country as far as financial planning. So he's awesome. But he had this guy from Ireland on. And I was like, how did you get a dude from Ireland? I have no idea. But the guy's got, I think he's done over 600 podcasts, and he's like world known. And he talks about how bad intros are. Like, you just got to get to it, and you just got to get going. But he did something, and Wes kind of chimed in on it. So I'm doing it on mine now because, you know, I never invent things. I always take them, borrow them from somebody else. That's the greatest way to do it.
Yeah.
So I always say, what's your grateful condition? That's always like, everybody's got a, you know, reason to go to work, reason why you live, reason why you do it. So what's your grateful condition? That's kind of how I try to start these things. It's like so off the left key. You got to really think about it now, right?
Right, I do.
Try to point it just a little bit more at you.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's so much better.
Okay. All right. My grateful condition. You know, I think that I have spent a lot of my life working hard, working for somebody else. And for the first time in, you know, my working life, which would be, I guess, probably about 50 years, I'm doing this on my own.
So you bought it?
Yes, I bought it just a few months ago.
Hey, congratulations. Isn't that an awesome feeling?
Yes, it is.
It's an overwhelming feeling.
Yeah. Some days are grateful and some days are, what was I thinking?
That's good. That's good. So tell me a little bit about you. Who are you? What do you do? Where are you at? Kind of the whole.
Okay. My name is Jonyce Putman.
Okay.
And I'm originally from Lubbock, graduated from Monterey. I have 2 children still living here in Lubbock, and I have grandchildren that are going to Coronado. And so anyway, my son-in-law and my daughter both graduated from Tech. And then my son started working for a motorcycle company right out of high school. Did that for a few years, went into real estate, and now he is come to work for me as a salesperson.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So what is your company?
Worx Payroll.
Worx Payroll. So
yes.
A lot of people probably have a misconception of what a payroll company is. So can you kind of break that down a little bit? Because before I got into business, 12, 14, 15, it's almost 15 years now.
Yeah.
Before I got into it, I didn't quite understand the depth of what a payroll company can do and what they are.
Yes. So basically what we do is we take the burden off of companies, and they can be a one-man company up to, 1,000 of employees. And we take care of that calculation of the payroll checks. We take care of the taxes and paying their taxes for them, and then filing those taxes, whether they be monthly, quarterly, annually. We take care of all that. We take care of anything payroll related, direct deposits, deductions, all those things.
I was fixing to say the deductions are the big deal because you got health insurance, then you get into retirement planning. Deductions, everything else that goes into it. So it gets pretty in-depth, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And I find that a lot of the companies that are using self-service payroll, won't mention any names, but, a lot of times they don't realize, they're just like, oh, well, I can do my own payroll. I'll just get in here. I just pay my people. Well, then you decide you're going to offer them a health plan. Well, those are pre-tax deductions. So they don't really know to go in and do that. And then that affects their employees' taxes. And so, the same thing with the retirement fund. Mm-hmm. They may only want to do the employer match on certain earning codes and things like that. And then, they just don't quite understand what all is involved in that. So we handle all those things for them.
Do y'all get into some of the HR stuff too? Because like some of the disclosures on like annual policies and things like that.
We really give them more the tools. We don't do as much of the HR consulting, but our software has got a ton of HR tools built into it to help them do their job, to help them keep compliance. It stores documents, it sends alerts, all that good stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to. It's like storing the documents or distributing an email out to the client or to the employee to make sure that they know this and that.
Yes.
That's where I've seen it be really, really helpful. And then also making sure when you're in certain retirement plans, they get certain notices and things like that.
Yes.
So do y'all work with a third-party administrator or a TPA?
Yes, several of them. We do. We do. And we upload those files for them. We're working now with the software to maybe have a 360 API to where it's actually interchanging the information between the payroll system and the plan, the retirement plan. So that's really getting to where the employer's hands off. They don't have to worry about that. A new employee comes in, the system will keep up with when they're eligible, and then report that information to the TPA, to the plan.
That's the key right there, is when they're eligible. And that's always a frustrating one for us, because we always have to go track it down because we're on the different side of it. So in our world, it's called a 321 fiduciary and a 338. So at 321 is where we just kind of give investment recommendations to the plan. A 338 is where they take all of the responsibility off of the business itself, and all of the investment responsibility of being compliant inside of a plan is on the advisory firm. And so there's different ways to interact that. Some companies like it where, hey, I still want to be in control, but I just want your advice to set it up. And then some of them want it where it's like, hey, I want all liability off of me as much as I can.
Right.
It's getting more and more like that, where they want a 338. And so it's interesting on that side of it, because we have our own software that we go in there and look at, so that we call it an investment committee, goes and looks at the actual plan and says, hey, what's the criteria you think that's going to be the most valuable to your employees? Because the hardest thing that I have to kind of educate business owners on that are offering, retirement plan services, which you should, almost all, you should. There's ways to do it and do it right. And it's a huge recruitment tool.
Yes. That
if it's done right, that you can be able to align your employees with the right advisory services. But on top of that, if it's done right, you can make sure that you retain employees.
Yes.
Because of that vesting schedule and things like that. So there's a lot of details goes into it. But to back on our side of it, is we always have to go back with the third party payroll companies to say, hey, this has changed, or that's changed, or this guy's eligible. And we lean on them to say, hey, this guy's terminated, or, this guy left the company and stuff like that. Because we don't get that update as often, as we're just really focusing on the assets in the plan, making sure that the investment committee sees that it's got the best money managers, it's got the best return on whatever metrics they want to look at, the best alpha, the best beta. There's all these information, Stratino and stats, and that you can just bore yourself to sleep on. I love it. That's the part I enjoy doing. Right. But most people don't, and they just want to know it's all done, right? So that integration between the payroll company and the business owner is really, really important. I will say the one thing that I think everybody's got to be educated on when you're looking at that, from just my perspective now, I want to jump back into yours real quick, is a lot of people don't know that there's a 316, and that is actually the plan administrator, and it's always the company. You can't get out of that one. And so they have to give us the relevant information, which typically goes to you, that is like who's terminated, who's here, who's eligible, what's their salary, right? All those things are important inside of a plan, because it puts you into a different class within the plan to be able to get different benefits. And so that's the one that I've always ran into, like, hey, if we don't know, and you don't know your plan documents,
right,
and you haven't reviewed your damn plan documents with your TPA, with your payroll company, with your advisor, you're in trouble. Like, that's typically the first sign that we go in and go, hey, when's the last time you looked at your plan documents? They're like, oh man, I haven't looked at them in a couple of years. I'm going, oh, okay, let's go do that first.
Right.
Because that's probably a problem there. And then let's pull people like you in that going, how's everything communicated? So it's a neat deal. So how did you get in the business? It's one of the biggest things is like...
So I've always enjoyed accounting. That's always been my deal. I was good in math. Went through high school, all that good stuff. Went to work for a little small bookkeeping service, and then ended up at a CPA firm. And I worked for a travel agency as a CFO, and that was a great job for about 9 years. And I took care of all the accounting and all that stuff. And then we merged with another travel agency locally, and it was too much for me as one person to do. And I thought, I'm ready for a change. And I have a little bit of, I'm a little bit of a computer nerd, enough to be dangerous. And so I thought, you know what I want to do? I want to do support, because everybody was always coming to me and saying, hey, could you help me with this? Could you help me with this? So I thought that'd be kind of a great job. So I went to work for a company here and and they put me in the financial end to help with government entities and finances and helping them on payroll and different things like that. And after about 9 months, I was like, oh no, this is not for me at all.
What'd you like and what you didn't like? You got it.
You were having to try to help people and you were helping grumpy people. And at the time, they had their own proprietary software. And so when the software didn't work, then you had to try to get with, one of the software developers. And that was just,
It was always friction, constant friction.
Yes.
Yep.
And you understood where both parties were coming from.
Yeah.
And it was just hard being in the middle. And so I had a friend who applied for a job and she said, you might be good at this. And it's a payroll company. And I said, I can't stand doing payroll. That is like the least financial thing I want to do is mess with payroll. And she said, well, just go talk to these people. So I went to work for, you may have heard of Fast Pay Payroll.
Yeah.
They were here in Lubbock. They started in 94. And so I went and interviewed and went to work for them and stayed there for about 17 years. And they decided to sell the company. So I went to work for one of our clients that we used to have, which is Brad Ralston with Truno.
Oh, yeah.
And Brad had been trying to get me to come to work for him for about 10 years, 3 different times. And I was being devoted and I was being loyal. And I said, I just can't, Brad. I don't want to go against, these guys have been good to me. So anyway, when they got ready to sell, I called him up and he said, yeah, let's do it. Let's start a payroll company. So we started that with the idea of kind of being they do POS systems for grocery stores. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of the game plan was try to get into the grocery niche with payroll.
That's probably hard.
Yeah, and it was. It was a little bit of a challenge, a little more difficult than we thought. And then we kind of went a different path from where that was. And so we decided that, I was ready to go out and try it on my own. And he said, I think you're ready. Let's do it. So
that's good.
And he's very supportive. He's kind of my mentor. Brad's always as there. He's great. If I need something, if I've got a question, he's a very good businessman. So
he is. He's really a part of the new golf course being.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And so my wife is doing a development right next to him. And I think we've reached out to him for 2 or 3 times and got some footage for him from our agency and things like that. And it's been just absolutely amazing he's responsive. He's there to help you. And he seems like he's a great guy. I've met him for 30 seconds, shook his hand one time. That was it. But I've heard great things about him. So I think it's coming from good pedigree, it sounds like. And he's a really good business guy and really good. So And then you decided, hey, I'm just going to do it. Because you just moved in like literally next door or across the street from me, right?
Right.
And here's the funny part is my old building, because we've only been here December of last year, so a little over a year and a half. And Fast Pay was next door. They rented from me next door there.
Oh. Wow.
So I knew, Brittany? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I knew Brittany really well. She was very, very nice when she was there.
Yes.
And then they sold out again to a national company.
Yes. And so when they sold out to the national company, we got about half of that business because there are a lot of local people that like to deal local.
Of course.
And so we basically doubled our business in about a 3-month period there.
Well, that's a nice little windfall too. Then.
Yeah. So when I started with Brad, we had 9 clients, and we have about 550 now.
Wow! Congratulations.
Well,
that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So we've really done well, and hope to continue to do that.
But when you say 550, you're not meaning like all of them's in Lubbock. Like
no,
you're pretty national now, aren't you?
Yes. So along the way, we have picked up some grocery stores. We do some grocery stores. We have some out in California. And and then Truno itself, we obviously still do the payroll for them. They are in 35, 36 different states.
Really?
So
Tell me a little bit about Truno, because you know more than I do, because I didn't know it was really, it's really just a POS system, a point of sale system for grocery stores.
Yes, and then they develop software that goes with that POS and all the good stuff. They have apps that help the grocery stores manage their business. And it's not just grocery stores, it's retail. It's, groceries is where they basically started off.
Okay.
But they've expanded into markets, so they've got some national retailers too that they do.
Wow, I didn't know they're that big.
Yes, yes.
So they're kind of going the opposite direction of, because I thought it was Tyler Technologies that they had kind of an in with. He's very wealthy, but he's a really smart CPA guy.
Yes, yes. And so he's who
into
I worked
everything.
for when I left for 9 months. I went to work for Tyler, and that was who I thought, that was when I thought I wanted to be support. And I realized, no, I need to go back to numbers.
That's a tough business. So
Yes,
I guess it was 19 years ago now, maybe 20. When I started back in the 90s, my dad had a sign company, and we couldn't transfer high resolution print files. We had to do it the old way where you scan it on a CD.
Right.
And so when you're doing bus wraps or you're doing stuff like those were gig files. So we actually, and I have patents in transferring high resolution print files through the internet before Dropbox even. Now, if I would have thought bigger, I would have been like,
Like Dusty, huh?
yeah, I was like, why did I just go to print files? Why didn't I say, well, everybody's got a problem with transferring high resolution print files, right? And,
Right.
So way back years, back in the late 90s, we actually had Dropbox before Dropbox was Dropbox, but we just didn't think through cloud-based computing that way. But anyway, so my point is I've already done the application side. Mm-hmm. It is not fun. It is very difficult. And we're 2 years into doing another one for financial planning for business owners. And it's 2 years in, and we have started coding on it. And we're just now getting to the part where it's like, hey, do you kind of, with software, you just got to take a leap.
Yes.
It is so hard because it's so comprehensive and costly. I will tell you that the software now compared to the 90s is like everything was just JavaScript and just, early HTML and things like that. It was really archaic. Now they have APIs for APIs for APIs, and they have code bases for code bases of code bases, and things are already packaged up for you. And you're just pretty much going and sourcing all these APIs to put some type of software together. So it's, I think the ramp up period, it took us over like a year and a half, 2 years just to ramp it up. Here you can, we're talking to developers right now, and they can ramp you up in 9 months to 90 days. It's insane. So, but the problem is I always saw it on the software side, and we're getting off, but this is fun for me. I love to venture off into rabbit holes, but the hard part that I learned from building my own software a long time ago is I didn't take the time to actually build it and tear it down, build it and tear it down, build it and tear it down, and actually just go find clients that would say, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want it to do? Mm-hmm. We went thinking that the client wanted this, right? But not having variable proof of them working alongside you to improve it for them. And I think the good software companies, as you've seen, have always kind of gone back and built it and tore it down for each individual client. So we're looking at it, and that's the hard part from our business now, is we're looking at it from our side of the house as financial advisors and going, what do we want, and who's going to be the client? Is it actually the consumer, the client, the business owner, the client, right? And there's hundreds of financial planning softwares, personal financial planning softwares on the market. There's zero business financial planning softwares that integrate personal and business together. So that I think that with artificial intelligence coming out and LLM models, that language models coming out, I think the entire industry of software is fixing to become, I wouldn't say obsolete, but I think it's going to be self-driven. You're going to have a whole lot of people just build their own in-house real quick. It's an interesting time on that side of it. It's a little scary, but it's interesting on there.
Right. Well, and I think it's pretty common what you're saying. A lot of companies don't do what you just said. Go back and tear it down and start over. They just try to keep overlaying and build it and change that. And that's a challenge we've seen in the payroll software for people like us that provide that. Software that can handle, not just one company, but multiple companies' taxes and things like that. And there's not many of them out there because there's so much to it as far as keeping up with every state. And you don't have just one state tax. Texas is lucky that we don't have state income tax, but you look at some of these states that have like a lot of these states now, Colorado, for example, is putting in family leave. So you've got to keep up now with family leave, and they've got mandatory sick, they've got mandatory vacation you've got to keep up with, and then you've got your unemployment and you've got your withholding. And so all of that needs to be within a software to be able to track and keep up with. And it's crazy.
That sounds like, I'm so glad I'm not in that business. But
because
it is hard.
Yeah, so there's just not a lot of that software out on the market because nobody really likes to jump in and tackle that. I mean, plus you have a huge liability if you
Screwed up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're probably bonded in so many deals. And then you got security concerns. And that's one thing that we spend a lot of time looking at is like the hackability of these softwares now. And everything's supposed to be, pretty safe. And, now it's getting where almost everything's driven to Azure or driven to, AWS or something like that, where everything's stored from Amazon because the security's higher there. And, it's Amazon, so they got everything already locked up. But,
and that's one of the things that we have tried to start. We are really encouraging our clients to start using the employee portal. And so the employee can go in there and update their direct deposit because we're seeing a lot of fraud where emails are getting intercepted. This is one of the big scams is they get their email address and they send it to their employer that says, hey, change my direct deposit. And it looks legitimate. It's from them, and then it's not their account. They haven't changed it. So that's one of the security and fraud alerts we have is that if the employee's logging in and they're changing their own direct deposit, you don't have to worry about getting an email.
That's a great point.
Yes. And so we just had that happen this week where one of our clients got an email that looked like legitimate from one of their employees, and they changed it, and it was like, Green Dot Bank. And that money's gone.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
and usually it's the employer. Unfortunately, they don't want to blame that on the employee because they didn't realize it. But still, it's crazy.
You got to have the safety controls in there, the process and procedures. And in my world, in the FINRA world, I mean, I spent 7 hours today, all day long, all Friday. I mean, I answered one phone call all day, just writing a whole new policy and procedures document for our registered investment advisory firm for the next upcoming year. And it's going to go back and forth to attorneys for like months on end.
Yeah.
It's crazy though, but 90% of companies, I look at my mom's company and I'm like, y'all don't have it's just kind of by the hip because most business owners, they work in the business. They don't have time to work on the business. We were talking about this right before we went on. I was like, now that you're a new business owner, it's like you got 2 jobs, right? It's, the 40, 50 hours of working in the business, then you got to work another 20, 30 hours on the business. Yes. It is tough. So what is your biggest... just not buying it. You bought it just, 3-6 months ago, right?
Yes.
What is the biggest thing that you didn't realize that, man, you got to...
Just what you just said, all this juggling. It's like not only am I trying to help run the business, I've got to, still do my other job that I was doing as far as that and be the business owner. And, that's.
So just juggling the two different hats that you have to wear.
Yes, absolutely.
And I joke around with my team. I'm like, I'm the chief janitor. That's it. I just make sure shit doesn't fall apart all day.
Exactly. You have a little bit different mindset when you go from running the company to owning the company too. You look at things a little bit differently than you did.
You do. You
really do.
There's a lot to it. And so what's the hardest, like give me something there. Like you're saying, hey man, what's the biggest, like, I did not understand I'm going to have to spend 10 hours a week thinking through this? Or was it the HR from the employees? Was it
that I hadn't had to, I had an HR department at Truno, because we were just part of their deal. So now I'm the HR person again.
Hiring people?
Yes, hiring people, keeping up with all their stuff, even doing our own payroll. I was just like, oh my goodness, it can take me an hour just to do payroll for 10 people.
Yeah.
I'm like, just the little things.
You ought to hire a payroll company.
Yeah. Well, still got to put the stuff in. You still got to keep up with all that.
Right. Right.
I had to set up a 401k. I have to keep up with all this insurance stuff. I didn't have to worry about general liability and all this insurance and make sure you got this taken care of. So that's been an eye opener for me.
And y'all just got that building, right, too?
Yes.
So have y'all done a cost segregation study on the building yet?
Not yet.
See, that's your first year. Yeah, we got to talk offline on that one because you'll love that. So we literally move buildings probably every 2 or 3 years just for that tax benefit.
Oh, okay.
And so we keep all of our old buildings, but we also outgrow them. So I think we're maxed out in this one already, and we've been here 12 months. And we're in that hiring stage right now. And I got to tell you, that's the fun part of bringing in new people because it's just new personalities in the office. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoy that. Just getting to know people and trying to help them seek their greatest opportunity. And so we got this guy, and he's, I want to say kid, but he looks like a kid, but he's like 35 years old, and he's from Boston. And so he's got that Boston accent, and I just absolutely give him heck over it. And so he like lays into it a little bit more. And then, you got the West Texas draw here, which everybody's used to. So it's fun having new employees, but then all of a sudden you get them on board. And then you're like, holy crap, I got like 15 other things I got to do just to get this guy ramped up into business, right? It's because they're all green when they come in. And
I know.
You got to figure out exactly how to get them going. And it's,
I know.
You think, hey, now I got somebody here to help me. And it's like, no, it takes 3 times more to get somebody up and going than it does to just do it yourself.
And that's how it was when I hired Josh. My son that's come in, he's like been our first outside salesperson. And he doesn't have a big background in payroll. He has a 0 background in payroll, let's put it that way. And so he took off and went to some training in Charlotte. And it's, he's like, wow. He goes, everybody knew payroll but me and another guy. So he said, we're buddies now. We're buddies.
Yeah.
But that guy was from Chicago, and him and his business owner were opening up a payroll company in Chicago, and they were bar owners.
Really?
Yeah. So I was like,
in Chicago, bar owners.
And they're going to payroll.
Yeah. I can make so many mafia jokes right now, but that's cool though.
Yeah. So they're both kind of starting off on the ground level and learning stuff. But I understand what you say about bringing somebody new in like that. That's, getting them up to speed, getting them to learn the business, learn all the ins and outs. And then there's just so much to get kind of set. Once we get people up and rolling, it's not a big deal, but it's getting all that stuff to begin with. It's probably the same with you guys. It
is. And I think it's with any business. And my hard part I have, and I'm so cognitive of it, I got to make sure I don't go the other way with it. But you can, it takes 3 times the amount of time to train somebody, but once you train them, they're done. Right. The problem is most people will bring them on and then micromanage them and make sure every little detail, and it's that trust but verify. They can't step away long enough. Mm-hmm. And I got a big business owner in Midland that's, he can't step away from it, and he drives great people away because people want ownership when you give them responsibility. They want ownership.
Absolutely.
And that's a very hard thing for business owners to do, is that trust but verify. And then, now you got to have some level of accountability there, but it's a very difficult deal to get done. So
I agree.
So what's the ideal client that you kind of look for when you're like, hey, this is the clients that benefit most from what I do?
I would say probably clients with employees between anywhere from 25 to 100. That's like a good type of client for us. They need a lot of the different features that we're offering in this new software that we're implementing. It's got, and even the larger ones, And one of the things that I think that I'd like to just kind of take a step back with payroll, and when you outsource it, I think some HR people think, oh, you're going to come in and take my job. Or even a small company. Oh, well, what am I going to do? Well, this day and age, there's a lot of things that they're having to do, a lot of hats they're having to wear.
Sure.
And if I've got a software that's going to help you and give you tools to do that, take away having to do open enrollment, for example, by paper, or get people when it's time to enroll in your insurance, just do that online when you hire them. And we're talking about, employees staying and you're finding those good employees. If we can help them do that all the way from interviewing people, keeping up with your job boards, and then onboarding them, keeping all that documents it's in storage where you're not handling this paperwork, and it all being one system that they can go in. But then having employee engagement in this day and age is so important. Making a good impression on that new hire, and then being able to communicate with your employees, especially if you're not all in one office, And so we've got tools that'll help them do that, that'll train them. There's just all those different types of things that helps.
As a business owner, I think it's going back to it's a different age now. Where culture inside of a firm is very important. And I say that in such a cliche term now, but I make it a point with my guys where we're just making sure we stay really, really connected. And I'm a driver in the office, but I'm, also just kind of lean on everybody around there and make sure that we don't lose that culture, because it's it's kind of the family here.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? I like that.
Right.
And I've been around them where they're so big where it's like, you know, you got to be prim and proper on every side. You can't have a joke. You can't relax and drink a beer and watch a tech game on 7 or 8 o'clock at night, you know.
Right, yes.
And that stuff is what we have. But culture is a big deal. And I think if y'all have a software and you also have a company that y'all provide that services to ingrain and keep culture consistent, that's a pretty cool thing. So that's a big deal. I didn't even really think through that, you know, payroll companies really make sure that all gets checked off on, because it's, you know, the company's going to create the culture. You just got to make sure you follow through with it to say, hey, you know, just because we speak it doesn't mean we have to actually do it.
And you've got the tools, and you've got the tools to communicate with your employee. You know, they're not having to wait on HR to get them check stubs or do an employment verification. The employee's got, you know, this day and age, you know, with new people coming up, they know they do everything with their phone. So the employee app does all that. You know, they can go in and look at their time off. They can request time off. They can, you know, clock in and out through that. Our time and attendance even has a feature that you can kind of go in there and it'll tell you what your check will be at the end of the pay period.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, you know, if money's a little tight this week, then you can look at it and say, hey, you know, based off my time, what's going to be my check? You know, it'll do stuff like that for you. So
do y'all get into, because we had to, because of the insurance side, is statutory, non-statutory status inside of payroll?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. It's a very unique one. Apparently, it's not a whole lot of people have that issue. And so we have it. So they're still considered W-2 employees here. So you still have to take out self-employment taxes. Mm-hmm. But they're also, but it comes to them almost like a 1099. So they can report their own taxes at the end of the year. And so that is one of the weird things that we had. A year and a half ago, when we started our own RIA, it wasn't that big a deal until we started buying other firms. Mm-hmm. And then now we're in this phase where we're buying a lot of advisory firms like ours. Like we're trying to buy one in Denton right now, and we just bought one in Wichita Falls. And the ex-owners are still staying on with us for 2 or 3 years.
Yes.
But they're used to being business owners, and they want to take their own deductions, and they want to throw some stuff through the company, right? Because they take their clients out, and they want to be able to deduct all that, and you can't really do it unless you're non-statutory. I always get it wrong, whether it's statutory, non-statutory. I always get it backwards. But where, you know, you're giving them the ability to fill it out as a Schedule C on their
just do
1040 and your 1099, but you're still taking out self-employment. It's a neat thing, and I learned that through one of the big insurance companies that we were associated with, 15 years ago, going, that's a really, because we were the first couple of years when you're starting off here, you're completely W-2. I mean, you report and everything like that, but when you're 35 years in the business and you're running your own office, I'm not calling you up on the phone going, hey, you in your office at 8:15 every morning?
Right.
You checking out at 5 o'clock, right? They get to make their own schedule, so it's a little bit different structure. So that's one that I always thought that's interesting, because I was like, man, I didn't even know that payroll gets that in depth, because of you can have different classes of people and how you do it.
Yes.
So do y'all keep up with whether it's W-2 or whether it's 1099? Or
we really don't get into the advisement part of that. We kind of leave that back to the clients and to work with their CPA, because they understand their business. They understand exactly how they're paying that person. And so, that's a fine line you've got to be very careful with.
Yes, ma'am, you do.
So we just usually take that information and
but you can't classify it in.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. If they tell us, look, this is what it is, then absolutely. We can pay that 1099 employee direct deposit. I mean, just like, any other type of employee. Okay. They have the same, be able to clock in. I'm not clock in, but be able to get to their app, get to their pay stubs, be able to view all that. Yeah, absolutely. And
so what's some key things that you look at? Because this is one thing with HR I think a lot of people don't understand, especially with payroll, is there certain dates you got to absolutely hit, and they're critical. And so things like you have to have, 1099s and is it W-2s?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I keep thinking W-4s, but you think I'd know that after all these years, but W-2s, right?
Yeah, W-4s are when you fill out your information.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
No, we just got through doing that. That's probably why it's stuck in my head with our new guy. But so W-2s, I mean, those have to come out, what is it, February 1st, isn't it?
Well, depending on when it falls, January 31st. Yes.
January 31st. See,
yeah, so they have to be out to the employee, and then we also have to have those filed with the Social Security Administration by then. And we take care of all that.
So that is a part of the services you offer.
Yes, yeah. So December and January are our busy times of year. A lot of companies are running bonuses for their employees, so we do about double the payrolls in the month of December, and then January is our big month where we're gearing up and getting those W-2s ready. You know, looking over data, making sure things look good, balancing that stuff out, and then we're filing those with all the respective entities.
Yeah,
the taxing entities.
And ours really starts in September because we got a September 15th deadline. Then it goes to October is where all the companies, you know, if you filed an extension, you got to file there. Well, you can actually change the way some of the retirement plans. There's advanced ones like defined benefit plans or defined contribution plans that you can, you know, pay all the way up into May and June. Well, that will change the previous year. It gets just messy as left and right.
Right.
And then you go into November, December. Well, we've trained all of our planning clients to, hey, we're no longer planning for taxes at the first of the year. Like most of them come in like February, March, and they're like, hey, you know, I just got to go with my CPA and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, great. 75% of the things we could have done is off the table now because you waited till the current year.
Absolutely.
Right. And so it's neat. It sounds like you kind of run in that same circle where you're humping it from November on, right?
Right, yes.
And you're trying to get everything out. So what's your busy time? What's your slow time? Because ours goes, we're absolutely dead, you know, July 4th. We you know, middle of June all the way kind of really July 4th on. That's only the time we get, and maybe in between Christmas to New Year's, and that's
There's
it.
a slow time.
I know, right?
Everybody still gets a paycheck.
Yeah, you're always going in, right? Yeah, I guess there is no, but I didn't know if it was like a lot worse or if it.
No, I will say, you know, end of the year is always a busy time, and then we have quarterly returns that we're filing, you know, in April, in July, you know, ending up the quarter in September. Seems like we'll slow down a little bit in the summertime.
So your quarterlies for tax purposes is kind of where you're ramping up as well.
And some of the states require that you file monthly for the withholding.
Oh, my goodness.
So we still do that. Oh, yeah.
So how big is the office you got running now?
We've got 9 employees.
9 doing all that. So
yes. We've got 9 in-house and then 1 outside sales. So, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's nuts. The productivity level that people have to do now is insane.
Yeah.
But software is helping that a lot. And
yes, definitely so. But you would have to change. I mean, it's just like with anything else. We've had to keep up with technology, you know, and make sure that we're offering people those benefits and offering them, you know, those tools to help them keep up with their lives because they're just as busy as we are as far as trying to keep up with all the compliance issues.
I'm sure. Yeah, that's the necessary evil I think we all have to participate in, right?
Right.
So where do you see yourself going now that you kind of, you know, are you still at that stage where I'm treading water and I'm just trying to get, you know, I start to get a little momentum going?
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. Kind of, you know, after the first of the year, after the move, you know, we're kind of it's settling in finally. Yes. So
that's good. Have you started looking at the vision side of it yet? How big you can grow this thing? It sounds like you have because you got your son on board now.
Yes, we'd like to expand a little bit into the Midland, Odessa area, Abilene, Amarillo. Maybe, you know.
When you say expand beyond having virtual offices, you're wanting to have physical offices.
Well, I don't know that we'll necessarily have a physical office, but I just think we're going after some of the businesses in that area.
Gotcha. That's where your outside sales is.
Yeah, because that's what's great about direct deposit. You know, you can pretty much do it anywhere. And we give people check stock in case something happens, in case, you know, we get a snowstorm and FedEx breaks down. They've got check stock that they can just print it back in their office for some reason. Or you've got a manual check. Somebody didn't get paid right, or, you know, you've got to let somebody go and you want to go ahead and give them a check right then. And we just give them check stock, and then they can just do that from their office and not have to even, you know, worry about us getting something to them.
That's a really good point because I didn't even consider that. So, I mean, with the disruptions that we had during COVID and internet downs and, you know, everything else, you got to really plan on every type of, you know, contingency there is, isn't there?
Yes, and when you deal with like disasters, like, you know, I guess Florida is where our ACH processor is. and they were having to go through all that and just, planning a hurricane coming in and they're fixing to have to maybe evacuate but they had backup systems and things like that. But there's a lot to it. There's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, I would say after today, we have to write all that in our policies and procedures as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we can't be down either. Because, when you're dealing with people's money, and especially in the society that we live in today, it's like, I think it's 40 or 60% of the people can't go one paycheck.
Right.
And so you're pretty much their lifeline. You got to make sure they got it. And so it's a crucial thing that you're working with there. And we look at it the same way, and we have to have redundancies if our building is burned down. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It's crazy things that we have to look at. If there's a pandemic, how do we operate? And I think COVID taught us a lot of that.
I agree.
They tightened that up a little bit because we were still open. I'm sure y'all were too.
Yes.
COVID didn't affect us one bit. The only thing that affected us is like we would spend, I think it was 1 week or 2 weeks off where half the office would work remote and the other half would be in. And then we'd have to get it completely cleaned. And then we could never be in the same room as the other groups.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because we couldn't, give
know.
COVID to the entire firm all at one time. That would be. And so it was just a weird thing that you have to kind of work through and do it. But it's kind of neat on that side. So you're growing, you're getting outside of, kind of staying in West Texas Permian as far as like.
Yes, I think so.
And that's good people too, and that's a lot of fun. But you also got the national accounts. How are you picking up national accounts in? Word of mouth, referral?
Yes.
That's always the best way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We work with a lot of CPAs. And then there's a lot of businesses, business owners here in Lubbock that may, open up another business somewhere else.
Yeah, that's true.
They have businesses in Dallas or, they're starting franchises and they've opened one here or there. So that goes on too.
Yeah, that's kind of how you venture out. I didn't even think of it from that. The CPAs is a big deal with us.
Yes.
We work with quite a few CPAs and always growing that. I would say that's the hardest thing for us to work with right now. CPAs are really worn out over the pandemic too. I would say it's just that there's not enough CPAs. It's so bad when we looked at adding them into our firm that we went to Tech because they have a nice CPA firm. University. It's one of the tops in the country.
Yeah.
And they were saying that whenever people get approved or appointed to that college, their first year, they would already have offers.
Yeah.
Intern offers to come straight out of it. So it's really hard to get CPAs. I think there's fixing to be a transition of the guard there. And it's hard to even buy these firms. We looked at buying a couple of CPA firms too, and they just don't want to change. They're so overworked. They're like, I got it where it works. I'm on easy street right now. I'm not getting disrupted. So yeah, it's a new world that we kind of live on that side of it. So what do you hate about the business now? Like, what is the biggest deal that you're like, I know we're on camera and I'm throwing you under there, but there's always stuff that I will look at it. And it's never client side. It's always regulatory side for me.
Yeah. I think probably one of the things that I hate is that there is not some type of uniformity between states and federal regulations. And so every state has a different way that you go in and file their taxes. And some of them will be, well, we don't care if you just have one client here. You're going to have to go in and log in to the website and manually file this. We can pay it, but we can't file the information. And then each website, and they are becoming a little bit more uniform. Quite a few states I've noticed as we're kind of making the transition. And the other thing I went through is that my tax manager of 15 years retired at the end of January.
That's not funny.
So that is another hat I'm wearing right now as we're transitioning over. And sometimes it's just hard to figure out where to log in and where to pay the taxes.
Right.
And that's the one thing I just despise, that they're all different, and they all get to go do their own thing. Well, we're going to do this. We're going to make, them have to do sick leave or vacation leave, and they've got to be this way. And,
it makes your job more important.
Yeah. But some of that stuff is not a payroll tax. But we get thrown into that. You know?
And it's weird because I think, and this is my big gripe, I think our government is just drunk right now. I think they are drunk on power and money to the point where it's like there should be a uniformed way to do everything. It's like us on the insurance side. We have to go into every state, For
Yeah.
every state we're appointed on the insurance or even on the regulatory on the SEC side, we have to report every state that we're in. And it's like, really, like, what's it matter at this point in time? I mean, we're pretty much a global society at this point where everything's online, but yet, you know, and all they care about is making sure that they pay their fees.
Yeah.
That's all it comes down to. Is like, you're going to pay
Exactly.
your fees for that state, and that's what it is. It is just a money grab across states, no matter what.
The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision.
But I find it more than not, it's just justifying somebody's job on the government side.
Right.
Is that there's really, I mean, technology is so advanced now that it tracks 90% of the laws where you can't screw them up anyways.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, bigger government left and right is what it's
but
creating.
these states are so far behind on some of their technology, though. And of course, COVID was horrible, you know, to these states. They got so far behind.
Yep.
And then if we did have an issue, even just registering a company to pay people in that state, I mean, it would be like 3 weeks before you could get a call back.
That's
you
crazy.
know,
That's how the IRS was for a long time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Don't even get me started on calling the IRS.
I had to tell a lot of clients, I had to walk them off the ledge a couple of times, you know, over the COVID years. And it's gotten better right now because they're like, I'm ready to get rid of my CPA. And I tell them, buddy, I'm telling you, you got a damn good CPA. What I'm telling you, it's not the CPA's fault. It's the IRS that know it's
Yes.
head from a hole in the ground right now. And they're not staffed right. And they're just there to try to hammer everybody. And they're so screwed up on every single level there is.
Yeah.
And when we had stuff like, we call them 706. So whenever somebody dies and they file for probate and they're over a certain net worth where you have to pay lifetime, you have to pay that death tax is what we kind of call it. But it's lifetime exclusion when you're over a certain level. You'd have to follow 706 and say, this is what my net worth is. And if I'm over it, I can port my estate exemption or my, and we would call or we would have the CPA call or stuff like that to file, and it would 2 years.
Wow.
2 years before they would get a letter back. And I'm going, holy. So you're holding all of that, like, should I pay it? Should I not pay it? You know, you can't do anything with those family resources for up to 2 years until you get that letter back from the IRS that says, okay, we accept your 706. And those are little things that I'm like, this is absolutely insanity to me. And so, and all the CPAs and the attorneys were like, you know, they would lock my hands up and I'm going, guys, there's opportunities here. And they're like, we don't care. You're just going to put it in a money market account and guarantee it, you know, put it in CDs or treasuries or some type of government safe asset class that we could put it in, just because they don't want to run the happenstance that comes back and they owe taxes on it. So it's crazy how the IRS is in there. So I do think your space is kind of fun because I got some clients on it. It is a hard conversation. How do you have that conversation with clients? Like if I'm a client, like we do our own payrolls here. Jennifer hates it, but we do it, right? No, we had to switch. We had to switch because QuickBooks wouldn't do it. That's right. So we had the statutory, non-statutory thing. So she switched over to a payroll company, and there's like 5 of us here. And I go, she looks at it like, I don't have to do payroll now, but the reporting of payroll is still something that she's got to do, you know? And I don't think we're using it right. I don't think we have the same software as what you have because we had to go into a third-party site now that we just applied for time off and leave and all those other things.
Yeah.
And so I think you're offering a little bit of services. We're not, but let's just say I'm green. How would you say, what's a good way for, you know, why use a payroll company instead of doing it in-house?
I think basically accuracy. You know, you're making sure that, like we were talking about, those deductions are set up right. What if you've got a garnishment that comes in? Do you know that you can only take 50% of that employee's? What if they have multiple garnishments?
So explain what that is.
So child support order.
Okay.
Multiple child support orders.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to get it
Yeah,
on
yeah.
my-
Well, and then there's IRS garnishments, there's student loan garnishments, and those
okay.
are all different rates that you've got to keep up with. You know, we take care of that, and I can't tell you how many times that people say, "Oh, you know, we use QuickBooks. We're okay. We're okay." Well, about 9 times out of 10, they're not okay. They really feel like that they're doing it right, but it's like we're the experts in that. Do you want to be an expert in payroll? Do you want to make sure that you're taking care of this? You've got your employees' taxes correct. You know, what the employee's claiming is what you've got there. And, you know, and then the other thing is everybody wants direct deposit. Well, you know, we'll handle that direct deposit, but what if that employee puts in the wrong number? Who's going to take care of that for you? We're there to kind of help you walk through all these different things, opposed to if you're doing it yourself or you're doing it with QuickBooks and you've got to try to call somebody and get somebody on the phone that can quickly say, you know, you're in a panic because you're like, I'm not getting paid, or my check didn't go through, or what's going on. We're there to kind of help you. And it's, you know, we don't have an answering machine. We pick up the phone live. You know, there's somebody that answers. Not that we don't have an answer or voicemail, but I mean, we don't have auto attendant, but we have somebody live that you can talk to.
Yeah, you can actually get to somebody without 47 prompts is what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think, you know, it's people's lives. It's important. And it's a bad day if your employees don't get paid. It's a very bad day.
Yeah, it is. It's probably, you could lose an employee over one.
Absolutely. And a lot of these restaurants and, you know, where they have a lot of turnover, that is a big deal. You know, one mistake and they're gone. And we kind of help with that. You know, we can help and make sure, you know, a lot of times I think sometimes people are like, well, you know, I do my payroll, but we make sure you're staying on schedule. You know, we're going to make sure that your payroll's turned in by 11 o'clock, you know, on Wednesday to have a Friday check date, you know, and if you're not, we give you a call. Hey, what's going on? If you need to go on vacation somewhere and you're like, hey, I've got my hours, but I'm not at a computer. I don't have, can I call it in? Can I fax it to you, or can I text it over to you? And we'll, you know,
we'll accommodating.
Yeah, we can be your backup. That's the other thing.
Let's break this down for a little bit, because I want to dive into it a little bit more, because I'm going to put my hat on. Like, my parents own a manufacturing company. It's a sign company. And so they've been doing that for 25 years. And you know, my mom was an accountant. She bought Lena Stevens, if you remember. Lena Stevens.
That was one of my favorite places to shop when I was
way back when Linda
place.
Liner owned it. Yeah, it was way back. She was the accountant there when she bought it. And so, I mean, it goes way back. So mom's always been really savvy on that. She's incredibly smart. And so what I always say is, playing devil's advocate, the biggest question I would have is, what happens when I have hourly employees? How would I do that trust but verify on making sure they're clocking in, clocking out, and they're doing it? Because sometimes she'll be remote. They'll be remote coming in, stuff like that. So does your app allow you to, on the phone, clock in and clock out?
Yeah, but we can restrict that.
Good.
So we can restrict that to your IP address. So you can only, and we can also geofence it. So you can only clock in within a certain amount,
this is important parts that I think you need to. That is such a good key factor right there. Geofencing, if you don't understand, is exactly, it's like an IP address, or it's a geographical spot that you can say within 100 yards of, or a quarter mile of, or something like that, where you can clock in and clock out. I think that's absolutely incredible that you brought that up, because that's one of the biggest things that I think she looks at is like, hey man, I don't want to trust that these guys can manipulate the system. So you've made it where it's pretty much infallible, and it's very difficult to manipulate.
Yes, absolutely. And then if you do have a question, sometimes you can go verify that punch. You know, it's going to tell you where that punch came from. You know, that type of deal. So the technology.
Clocking in for lunch. Off for lunch.
Yeah, and the other thing is like, if you're operating in the state of California, they have a ton of laws that are very pro employee.
Oh, I'm sure.
You know, you have to take a break. You have to have a lunch. You have to allow them to do that. And you've got to keep up with those records. And if you go through an audit, you've got to make sure you've got those records available.
So can you kind of lean on that geofencing deals? Because most of her crews are remote. Like, they go to other people's businesses and put up signs, take signs down. So can you, like, hey, you know, when they...
Yeah, so say they get to that
GPS tracking on the phone then too?
Yes, they do. The employee usually does have to allow that. You know, that is part of it, but you just kind of give them that up front.
Well, it's their own phones. I mean, she gives them their own phones. So
so that's not an issue at all. Yeah. But then when they get there and let's say, okay, well, I'm on this job, and so they can clock in to track their time at that job if they want to.
That's
kind of a
what
job
is
cost,
so
and then
valuable.
it automatically clocks them out
When
of
they
where they
leave.
were. Yeah, or when they leave, or when they get to another job, it's going to clock them out of that other job, so that you can track. Okay, he spent this much time at this job. He spent this much
Yeah.
time. Yeah, and then when you get ready to do payroll, all you're doing is verifying. Hey, all this looks great, and you click a button, and all that time imports in. You're not rekeying anything.
That's great. But I don't want it to be like, hey, it's micromanaging of the employee to be there.
Not at all.
But what she looks at it from is, or what I look at it from, is being accurate on your estimates, being accurate on your invoicing.
Yes.
Because if, hey, she's billing those trucks and those drivers, those technicians by hours, and it's killing two birds with one stone, because she can come in there and go, hey, we estimated 3 hours, it took 4.
Right.
And so we lost revenue on that job. What made this job more difficult that we're not accounting for? So it's more than just an HR service that you're providing.
Right.
You're able to see when they were on the job and off, if you're going through that system, right?
Right. Yes.
And if you can do that, then that's a huge value add. I think you're providing. That could be a really, really cool thing. In fact, my mom reached out to you because she needs less things to do, but remember the control thing that I said that business owners fall in that trap of, is they want to kind of have the control over everything. At one point in time, you can work in it or work on it. And there's that great book where Ferris, I think it's his last name, that wrote it. Ryan, double check that for us, The 4-Hour Work Week. If you haven't read that book, read The 4-Hour Work Week.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite books inside of there. I think it's not Jim Ferris. Anyways, I hate it when I'm so bad with names. I'm in the name business and I'm bad with names.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm really having a lot of fun. So, Tim Ferriss, 4-Hour Work Week. Yeah.
Okay,
So that's
awesome.
That's a really good thing to take a look at. And I always try to apply it there, but that's a neat deal. So what else is inside of there? And the retirement plans are a big deal for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
What about fringe benefits like life insurance?
Yes.
All the insurance
deals.
deals.
We keep with all that. And
dental, health.
Yes. And we keep up with that. And I think as more employers offer these benefits, we also can put that like on their check. Or we give them a benefit statement at the end of the year. And so if you're an employee and, you're thinking, because I was at a conference and they were talking that like 45% of people are looking for a job, in this day and market. Always. But then it's like, you sit back and you look and you're like, wow, they're doing a 401k match. I've got insurance benefits. They're paying this portion of my insurance. They're paying for life insurance. I got dental. I've got vision. All that stuff adds up to the employer, but it's also good for the employee at the end of the year to see what it's costing that employer to take care of that employee too, and what benefits they have.
That's such a key point, because those fringe benefits that come on the side is kind of lost in your pay, but it is a massive expense to the company. And it is one of the hardest expenses, especially in such a high inflation time period that we're in. It is getting very, very difficult to offer some of these benefits inside there, and making sure that you maximize them. And the only way to maximize them is just renew people's mind to the fact that they're receiving them.
Yes.
And I think that's what you're getting to, is like, hey,
Right.
I got an end of the year benefit, and this is how it's showing up there. And so if you're an employer, and you're giving those benefits, make sure that you take a little time, 15 minutes, a couple times a year when you're doing your annual plan, or you're doing your whatever company meeting, to say, hey, here's what you're going to get, and this is what we do for you. And I think it kind of gets glossed over too much.
Right.
And it's, you got to renew their minds that, hey, it's not your salary that I'm paying for, because a lot of business owners and employees don't understand. At a very basic minimum, you're paying, 1/2 is self-employment tax. So that's about 7.3 roughly %.
7.65.
I was under. I thought it was 7.3 because I thought it was 14.6. So I was wrong. So 7.65 right there.
Right.
So you add that on top of it, and then you talk about you're adding, it depending on the salary, right? But you could be adding 8% maybe 10, 12, 4, 3, depends on the salary of health insurance benefits, all the fringe benefits. And then most companies, if they have retirement plan services inside of there, then you're looking at at least 3% to be
absolutely.
a 3% match there. So I always look at it whenever we hire somebody and I say, well, and I talk to a business owner, well, it's a $50,000 salary. It's a $60,000 salary. And I go, no, it's not. I go, you add another 15, 20% to that salary. That's actually what's coming out of the business.
Right.
You know, so when you're factoring and you say, hey, I'm offering somebody a $60,000 salary, it's more like 75. And I've looked at some people's payroll and I've looked at their companies because we do a lot of estimates of values for companies because they buy and sell companies and we help them do that.
Sure.
We don't, when I say help them, I help them think through what their value is, right?
Right.
And there's an electrician company right now, a plumbing company, and then a air conditioning company, all rolling up into one. And they're like, how in the world do we do this? And they started looking at it from an employee standpoint. And I'm going, y'all guys are looking at it wrong. This is why you're not as profitable as you think you are. It's because you're not putting all the other costs that are associated in with that employee.
Right.
And I'm not talking about like hard cost of buildings, phones, and things that you have to service for a client. I mean, a employee. I'm talking about the actual cost of, you know, taxes and fringe benefits, right?
Exactly.
So what's cost? Now that we're on that subject, this is what I thought was shocking when I looked into this because I refer out not as much as I thought I would, but I refer out quite often into your space. It's not as expensive as you think.
No, and just to kind of give you an example, 10-man payroll, that's $125 a month.
That's way cheap.
Yeah.
That's just like what, $12 a person?
It actually $8 a person, and then we have a base fee on top of that. But that's just your basic, and then onboarding where the employee can do all their onboarding, offboarding, time and attendance. Those little things add up, but still, even at $10 an employee, $80, it's minimum.
It's very minimal.
Yeah.
So thin margins then running a business.
Yes. It's a volume. It's a volume game. But, when we do get to those bigger clients that, they need a little bit more to help them run their business, we've got that availability to help them do that. One of the things that I'm most excited about that we're doing right now is we are connecting to the job boards like Indeed and Monster and all that. And so we have a tool that you can set up your job postings, and then it will analyze. It actually has 4,000 free job boards that it'll go out and post to, but it will analyze for you where your applicants are coming from, how much it's costing you, and where and you have the ability to grade those applicants as they come in. It's got a communication tool in there. So let's say which I think, how many people go out and apply for a job and then they never hear anything? Well, I had a job opening and I had 80 applicants. Well, I sent a message out to all of them. Thank you very much for applying. We will be spending the next 2 weeks reviewing over applicants. So they kind of knew where they were in the process and how long the job was. We've now closed the position. So it's kind of a communication deal. And then if you do have applicants, you've got a way to kind of store them to go back to. If you didn't use that person, you've still got that application on file that you can go back to. But I just like the fact that it lets you analyze your cost on what you're spending with Indeed and Monster if you know where that applicant is coming from.
Yeah, that's a cool feature. And that's just a part of...
Yes, and that's another one of the modules that we have that, and then if they do fill out the application, then what they put on that application rolls over into when you hire them. So none of that stuff has to be filled out again. Oh, it's already there. So your manager just goes in, maybe puts in their rate of pay, that, and then, they can fill out their tax information and all that, and then it all rolls into the system. So you basically don't do anything as far as paperwork goes. That's
amazing. That's really, really cool. So
yeah.
And I would say hiring right now is so hard.
Yes.
It is very, very hard. And what I thought was shocking, and for my space is because we hired, it's a weird space. So it's like CFAs, or we're hiring CVAs or financial advisors and things like that. So it's a very competitive space.
Very much.
And and that's the hard part because it's competitive on our space in a weird way is, money's always going to be there because it's in finance, right? It's always, you got to be there. And that's one you just got to, if you're going to hire, you just got to pay the right way. The hard part for us is we live in West Texas.
Right.
And so, and I've done the remote deal and it's not as good. We're just a smaller shop where we like that connectivity and everything's not just black and white and here's your job description and you do these 27 steps and that's what you're focusing on. Ours is more of a constant engagement of developing positions. And so that's the hardest part that I have. And being able to go back and source kind of like what you're saying of where that information, because I had crazy people from New York, Chicago, California with masters and PhDs applying. And I'm going, there's no way, they look great on paper, but just to bring them from New York to West Texas,
right.
That's a hard culture shock. And so it's that's neat that you're kind of sourcing that out and kind of pinning it down. Is there controls on that or is it more analytics that you're giving back?
Yes, controls. It's got all kinds of filters and things like that you can do. So it's really, and that's where the AI part's beginning to come in. Helps you obviously write a job post.
Yeah.
Helps you, do that.
That's being integrated in everything now.
Yes, absolutely. So, yeah.
And when I say it's hard, that's a culture shock from New York to West Texas. Is not that one place is better than the other. The hard part is the wind blows here. And when they see their first haboob, there's like, get me the heck out of West Texas, right?
Yeah, but have you ever been to New York?
I know. There's the other side of that, right? So I've heard New York's like, you might get stabbed in the subway right now.
Yeah, so I'm kind of like, maybe it's a quality of life deal too. Yeah, I could deal with a little bit of dirt, probably.
Yeah, that tells you you're a West Texas right there, because I hear it the other way.
Absolutely.
I will tell you, my boy from Boston, Patrick, man, he's going to be on the show here pretty soon. He's grew up in Boston, the heart of Boston, and then got married and lived in Dallas for 5 years and ended up in West Texas. I have no idea. Well, I do know, and he absolutely loves West Texas. He just, and it grows on you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. There's some days when we do have those dirt days. I'm like, oh, why do I live here?
I do too.
And it makes me grumpy. I don't know about you. It's just something about looking at the
brown
sky and breathing it. I'm just like,
grit in your teeth all day long, and it's like, oh, this is miserable. But then you go out to today.
I know,
and it's just the perfect place to live. Our sunsets, you can't beat our sunsets.
I know.
You can almost see the curvature of the earth, and there's no other place on earth that you can watch your dog run away for 5 days.
Yeah, right.
I think I've said that joke one too many times on this podcast, but it's still it's so true though, right?
Yeah, I know.
It's just flat West Texas. It's a desert, but it's pretty.
But
cool.
we do have beautiful sunsets. We really do.
I looked at it last night and I was like, dang, we don't get those clouds like we get. And
I know.
You get I don't know if you've ever heard that song. It's in the orange. I think he was sitting in West Texas when he wrote that song.
Yeah, and the other night I went home. I think it was Wednesday night, and we had those clouds, and there was a brilliant pink sky.
Yeah.
And it's just almost breathtaking.
It is. I enjoyed West Texas. And so you said you got 2 kids. One's in the business, and what's the other one doing?
So my daughter is a controller at Citibank, and then her husband is a CPA. So we have a lot of accountants in the business.
So what CPA you got?
It's DWA, Dunnigan, White and Associates.
Are they the ones on 122nd?
Yes, and Quaker.
Yeah.
Used to be with Charles Perry, or Charles Perry's in their office.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Kevin Dunnigan's my son-in-law.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we got a lot of little synergies right there.
Yeah.
One way or the other. So CPAs, man, it's a crazy sport right now.
Yeah, I know.
We were on a call last night with the guy that's he only does state federal cases for criminal forensics, and he's a CPA, and he works for one of the big houses. And I was like, hey, buddy, like, jump on my bandwagon. Come on.
Yeah.
And he was like, if I was 15 years younger, Brandon, he was like 67. He goes, I'd be right there with you. I'd love to grow this thing with you. But I go, how? He's like so decorated, but a lot of people don't understand there's different facets of public accountants.
Right. Yes.
You know, tax is only one small sliver of it. There,
Right,
you know, there's corporate
absolutely.
accounting, there's forensic accounting, right? There's audit, which is massively big is audit.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are in audit, and audit seems to go with corporate a lot.
Yeah.
And but tax is always on the way on the outside, and so I'm always looking for the tax guys. Like we have a tax attorney in house, and those guys are. But you know, being a tax attorney, they'll tell you all the laws and nuances on it. But you still got to get the person that actually puts their hands in it. Goes, no, it's step 1 through 12, and it sounds great from a you know, tax legal standpoint, but you still got to get it done. And there's a gap there, you know, and it's kind of neat. But I digress. So you go camping, enjoy the grand kitty date. How old are they?
I have 5, and they range from 21 to 2.
So you're still enjoying life, right?
Oh, yeah.
But you get to spoil them and give them back. So I'm in the opposite. So we had Kyla on. She's 19 now, and she's at WT A&M, and she wanted to go to A&M. She was in the, what did they call it? What's that, blend program? Because she had a 4.0. Everything was great, and it's virtually impossible to get into A&M. So she was waitlisted on their blend program. She spent 1 year in one of their sister college, and you're automatically in.
Yeah.
Well, she went to WT&M. She goes, I ain't leaving. This place is amazing. And so she absolutely loved it. Now she's a TA as a freshman in chemistry. And I was like, where did you get those smarts? I get to brag on her a little bit.
Right.
It's like I was a freshman, second semester freshman, you're already the TA. And I was like, oh, that's going to look great on your resume. Go do it, you know?
Yeah.
And she's like, she's getting a different perspective, which I thought was cool, on what the professors have to deal with. And now that she's kind of, you know, just turned 19, and she's having to deal with these kids that are taking, you know, some of them are a little older than her, and she's a cute little blonde girl that's, you know, gets harassed. And I go, and she's like, I don't take any bluff, Dad. I was like, I know you don't, sweetie, because she's tough. So I got that. And then I got the other spectrum where I got an 8-year-old boy finally, and then Adelie's 11. And so get off usually like yesterday, and I put my taxi driver hat on, and we're going from sport to sport to sport there is. And I'll tell you, when Kyla was a senior and I had to do the same thing, last year was a hard year. They make these kids in high school just every week there's a function.
Oh, I know. I know.
It's tough.
Yeah. So Kevin's middle one is a sophomore at Coronado, and he played basketball. Then he's in baseball right now, and then their youngest one's 5 years younger, and so he's 12, and so he's playing baseball. And then Josh's oldest is 6, and he started playing t-ball. His first game was this week. So 3 baseball games this week. I didn't get to make Grayson's last night, but it's like, I could go to a game every night almost anymore.
And you still got to support tech too, so you got to jump in there every now and then on the big boys. It is fun, but it is a lot. They make these kids do a lot. They never get to be kids anymore, and it kind of hurts my heart because I remember being a kid and I just run around with friends all over the place that I grew up in, and we never cared about everything. Everything now is like you got to function every single night.
Right, to be competitive. Yes, you do.
If you don't, you're done. You might as well just not even play the sport unless you just absolutely love sitting the bench. So it's a crazy, crazy time we live in. But that's it. What's one good takeaway that I got to say? You know, being in business for a couple of months now. Is this your first business to actually own?
Yes, by myself, yes.
And I don't want to ask your age, right? I would never do that. But I would say I give you massive props for.
Well, right. So I had the choice to retire about 3 months ago. Instead of retiring, I bought a business.
Good luck to you. That is.
I don't want. I just kind of what it was. It's like I've always wanted to do this, so I did it, and it's like I wasn't ready to retire. I thought I was, and then I was like, I'm not ready.
Yeah, it keeps you young. I will tell you, we quit saying it in our client meetings because you can retire from something or you can retire to something.
Yeah. And
so we just rephrase it to, you know, help you have the resources to do what you want instead of what you have to do, right?
Right.
And so it's there's a difference now, and I think our culture going back into the Industrial Revolution age, just get on a weird subject here, but taught that you go work for a company and then you retire and you had Social Security, you had a pension, right? And you had a little bit of savings, all these things. And I'm never going to retire. Now, I might retire from something into something else.
Right.
But I love what I do. I love the people I get to work with, and it's a lot of fun when you're in that space. But I will tell you, I would love to off-shift some of the stresses of it.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I'm saying? That
Yeah.
I don't think, no matter the grind is what's the hard part of it. And I think you design that grind yourself. And I got a good business owner. That's a good friend of mine. And he owns a billboard company and just absolutely, and I'm going, dude, he goes, yeah, I'm working hard, Brennan, maybe 12 hours a week. And I was like, he goes, I give up a little bit of capital, but I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
And I just bought back my time. So everything I look at when I talk to business owners is, what are you going to do to buy back your time? And I think there's so much value in that.
Right.
And it's more than a monetary value, because everybody looks at, well, it increases my cost of doing business.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I don't get as big a windfall in business, but dang sure you get to buy back your time to be able to do what you want to do when you want to do it sometimes. And it's a very hard balancing act. And it goes both ways, because the other side of that is I always see the absentee owner.
Yeah.
And that goes south quick.
Yes.
I have not found an absentee owner that has ever made it.
Right. Yes. But I do think I've got a great team, and that's my goal. Once we kind of get settled in, I've got a great team that, can give me that flexibility.
That's it. Having the flexibility, and it's a trust but verify, but you still kind of, you're coming in, you're working, hey, what are we growing? We hitting our numbers, fraud's a big thing, things like that stuff was like, why is money all of a sudden missing out of here and there?
Yeah.
And it's not other people's money. It's always the owner's money. It's always the revenue of the companies going south. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And things are happening. So that's the ones that I always like, hey, it's cool to be absent. And, you can be gone for a week, a month, a year, but eventually you got to come home and put a little bit of time into it and make sure that this thing is like, it's like I always say, owning a company is like having a newborn, right? You got to tend to them every 5 seconds, right?
Right.
And then eventually you want that kid that's, 35 years old that, hey, it's cool. I can check into you every couple of months and make sure you're alive.
Right.
But you're running pretty well, right?
That's a great analogy.
It is tough in business that way. So I wish you the best.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Really appreciate you coming on, especially us shaking hands and going, hey, why don't you jump on here? Because I need to visit with you about a couple of things. And we covered a lot of stuff. But
Yeah, we did. It was great. It was fun.
I enjoyed you. Have a good
thanks.
one and come back on with us one day.
Okay, I sure will.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's it.